never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.
Now, Matt, I know that we like to have a good time here on Dungeon Master of None, and
Matt,
this is
some of us.
This is not a political podcast, but I know you know this, like all things are political. And so I think that it's finally time that you and I got a little bit serious about this and really started doing the work and like being honest and like, really digging in. So to that end, I've sent you a number of clips, some excerpts, starting with Jean-Jacques Rousseau's discourse on inequality. So I'm gonna need you to just take a look. No, pay attention. We have a lot of ground to cover. All right. By the time we get to the Federalist Papers, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. So start reading, and then when you're done, we'll come back and we'll dig
and then we can record again. I really do. I have to read de Tocqueville again. I really don't want to, Rob.
You have to read de Tocqueville more than you ever have before. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome back. This is Dungeon Master of None.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt. I'm keeping politics out of games since 1986.
Rob, I'm also keeping politics out of games. And yeah, we're just doing a big old roundup today. We got a lot to talk about. We've had a couple of weeks where things were slow. Matt was busy. I was not. There was some things happening in the world, so we got some catching up to do. So we're going to talk about what I think and what Matt and I think are some pretty like exciting developments in the world of TTRPGs. And then we're going to talk about what's going on with us, our games, what we got planned and what we're working on. There's some, Matt, I think there's some cool stuff cooking, both on the the micro and macro scales, maybe even the mezzo scale.
Ooh, yeah. We've got all the scales. I think maybe we'll get into like a little bit of game theory, try and address why games are important. Could be fun to talk about. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, the world sucks as always, but let's.
It was Hell World before, and it's Hell World again, and
Hell World 2. I think we got a DLC for Hell World, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
For all of the backers. I just have to say, so we've obviously like the biggest news of the last like 3 months in gaming is that there's like a new edition of the biggest game in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, and who the hell knows like whether it's successful or not or selling well. We'll of course continue to give our reviews of it, but like I think the other side of the story is like I don't know, I keep seeing other games being sold at my local game store and hearing of friends playing things that are not D&D, things raising money that are not D&D. That's exciting too.
Yeah, I mean, we're a small sample size, and Matt and I are obviously on a particular side of the TTRPG spectrum, but I've been hearing the same thing. A lot of interest in other games, a lot of people playing other games. Whenever I go to my failing local game store, there's more and more non-D&D space. My Guardian has the store in my town has a really cool like front section, which is always just like either indie or local or like small zines with just like showcasing cool new stuff. So, I mean, I feel like we've been saying this since for the entire time we've been doing the podcast, because that's part of why, but like it's a really exciting time. This is like really like a renaissance for TTRPGs, and there is some specific news which is pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, we're Kickstarters are one thing. Matt and I have done at least one episode on Kickstarters that raised a lot of money and didn't do anything. So I don't want to say that like a Kickstarter raising a bunch of money means anything, but it's a good sign that people are interested, I guess.
Yeah. And like just on the like personal end of the TTRPG news, it's like a lot of games that I like keep coming out with new stuff.
Yes.
Lancer, one of my favorite games. I've been slowly working my way through Lancer Battle Group, which is a different role-playing game set in the Lancer universe. They just announced another Lancer role-playing game, and then like Blades in the Dark, one of our favorite games to run, like has a new supplement by John Harper, Deep Cuts or
Cyberpunk Red releases regular, like free DLCs, I think monthly. Last month it was like cyber pets, like rules for having pets in your game. They released one a few months ago that had rules if you liked the Edge Runners anime and wanted to include more like 2077 type stuff in your game. Like the funding and support they've gotten from, from the game coming out and from the anime and people being interested in Cyberpunk Red has meant that I think Talsorian Games can just continue to put out cool new stuff, which is awesome. Like it's, this is something that not a lot of game companies have the resources and time to do, and so it's really neat to see that they're continuing to support and add new stuff. It's just they're clearly having fun with it in the rules.
I was sort of wondering if there would be like a post-pandemic crash in the like game, renaissance market as people got busy again. And while it's probably, in the words of Zhou and Lai, like too early to tell whether this gaming revolution is successful or not,
yeah.
I feel like we might have seen something so far.
I feel like
it's
here to stay, and we'll talk about in our game theory bit why I think that's the case. But I do think that there's renewed interest. I also think like a big part of it is that the old stigmas are falling away, and that's a long process, right? That takes years, decades, for people to come around to the idea that it's okay to play D&D, right? Like no one's gonna shove you in a locker. Yeah. Like that's all that's all in the past. And I think that I mean, obviously I have an investment in this, like personal and otherwise. But I really do think that like people are into this and it's going to stick around. I think the renaissance is ongoing, the revolution.
I am really excited, speaking of other things we're excited about, in the direction they're taking Starfinder 2, which is essentially, a bit of like Starfinder mechanics lore. Like Starfinder came out at the end of the first edition of Pathfinder, and it kind of, play tested a lot of ideas that would make it into Pathfinder 2nd edition. But it wasn't exactly the same game as Pathfinder First Edition. There was enough compatibility that if you wanted to, you could kind of cross the streams and use stuff from one book and one setting for another. It didn't always completely gel, but they decided to go like a different direction with Starfinder 2, which is going to release not too far in the near future, which is that like everything is compatible, and so that like we don't need to reprint the fighter class. If you want to play a fighter, like here are the sets of weapons that are available to you in Starfinder, just use the fighter class, and we all know you just use the online resources for Pathfinder to build your character. So go nuts. I think that's like the perfect way to play it for people who play Paizo games.
I've always liked the way that Paizo approaches these things. They're always approaching it from what I consider to be a customer player first perspective, and always making things as accessible and interfunctional as possible. They really care about this. Like they're not trying to squeeze every last dollar out of you. Well, I'm very excited to review Starfinder 2.0. It's coming soon. We're going to be talking about it, but yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah, and you can definitely make the mistake of saying Kickstarters are everything when they've got to be a small part of the market. But like the biggest news of the year is there's like a ton of huge Kickstarters. Most of these, but not all of them, were heavily branded. So we had the final tally of the Brando Sando Cosmere role-playing game, which raised like $14 million. And I think also like the Discworld, another branded game, RPG.
$15 million, Matt.
Wow. Okay, you've read all these novels, and I've read like half of one. I think like this is probably right. It's got to be at least some percentage of these people are people who are just fans of the novels, and maybe are like new to role playing.
So I'm positive, and I don't think there's any way to measure this, but that like a lot of people, based on the enthusiasm for this, are fans of Brandon Sanderson who are either RPG curious or have become so because Brando Sando's putting out an RPG. Because I do think you're right that a lot of the people investing in this backing this. This is not just TTRPG players. Like, the player base is honestly, like, I'm not, possibly by itself not big enough to support a project of this size. And part of that is that this comes with, I think, a new story, a bunch of art and art books, which is good, which is cool. Like, that's a good selling point for this RPG. But either way, I think this is a good thing. I'm gonna, like, longtime listeners will know, I have read a lot of Brandon Sanderson. I read the entire Mistborn series. I read The Way of Kings 3 times before the second book came out. Since my Brandon Sanderson phase, I just want to say that I matured a lot in the last 10 to 15 years, and I no longer
You've
enjoy...
done some growth.
I have done some growing. I no longer enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing or his plots or his books very much, and I have even perhaps become a hater for a lot of reasons, largely because he just sort of, like, sucks all the energy and enthusiasm out of fantasy in general. Everybody has, like, hard magic system brain now, because that's what Brandon Sanderson likes. He likes everything to, like, work like a science or math. And while I think that's, like, sort of like a neat thing in certain books and settings, I do not think that is, like, how magic ought to work most of the time. Also, he uses words like artifabrian and spren.
Not familiar with that word.
And these are, like,
Spren?
important concepts in his Cosmere RPG, and it annoys the shit out of me. He should have tried harder to come up with a word that didn't fucking suck. Anyway, the point is, I have actually heard good things about this RPG. I have not backed it. I'm not going to. I will. No. We will probably.
Here's the thing about Kickstarters: you can always just buy them when they come out. You know,
we will review it when it comes out, because obviously it's a big deal. But it does seem like it's, like, actually taking the task seriously as $15 million ought to justify. I don't think so, but it does seem like it's not just like a hacky, like, 5e whatever. So we'll be watching this with some interest, and I do think
listen, I think
it's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be a branded role-playing game of that's not coming from, like, an established company with a bunch of, like, really cool designers that's going to break new ground in, like, design of role-playing games, right? Someone like, an established publisher like Fantasy Flight Games could, for example, do this with their role-playing games, and did. I think it's also, Rob and I, being the, like, TTRPG snobs that we are, like, my gut reaction is to always, like, maybe, like, shit on licensed properties. But of course that's wrong. I currently, we'll get into it later, like, run a licensed property game. And going back to, like, when I was new to role-playing games and trying to, like, get into them, like, I really got excited when, like, a licensed Lord of the Rings game came out, or a friend said, I'm actually running Star Wars game. I'm like, well, I don't really understand what D&D is, but I do understand what Star Wars is, and I know it's good. And I'm sure that, Cosmos,
Cosmere.
Carl Sanderson will do that for some people, right? And like, if that's the way you get into the hobby, that's fine.
That is a great point, because the first game that we played was a Star Wars game, and I think I played Star Wars games and Lord of the Rings games as often as I did D&D for my first, like, 10 years of playing games, because I was excited about those properties. So, like I said, I'm a hater. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not, but I can step away from it enough to know that that this is probably a good thing, and that will probably mean more people come into the hobby, and maybe it'll be cool on its own. Like, maybe it'll be neat despite being a licensed
Speaking of licensed whatsits, there's also a Terry Pratchett Discworld role-playing game that raised $3 million.
$3 million.
And, $3 million, or maybe £3 million. I'm not sure. This one's by Modifius, and it seems like they're coming up with their their own system specifically for this one. To go from one set of novels to another, here's a set of novels I've read a lot of. I probably won't read any more in the future, but at least in my recollection, they still hold up.
They're good. I've recently reread Guards. They're good. I mean, they're still good. They're still Terry Pratchett's one of the greats.
Yeah, and I think it's always interesting when you've got a license setting that is comedic in its nature. Like I think like a year ago there was also a like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Kickstarter that raised a ton of money, and a Monty Python role-playing game that like raised a lot of money, and these like three comedic properties. Yeah, I'm interested in that. Like, I think comedy often in role-playing games comes from like a completely new setting where there's no rules of canon or established things. Like, I don't think meeting death from Discworld is particularly funny. However, when my players meet my version of death, whatever, that can be comedy gold. But we'll see. I'm always curious whether anyone will actually play these types of ones. Whether they're just, but either way, it's more money in the pockets of people who make TTRPGs. Yeah.
We talked about this in our other Kickstarter episode, but sometimes people fund them and it never gets played. Lancer's one of the standouts because it was a Kickstarter that raised a ton of money, and it is a active, growing community and people play it a lot. Do people play some of the other like heavily funded games? Unclear. No way to like know, but it's always sort of like an open question. That being said, I'm not mad about Terry Pratchett's estate and Modifius Games getting a bunch of money, and I'm only sort of mad about Brando Sando getting a bunch of money. So it's good. And speaking of people who I am really not mad about them getting money is the Trench Crusade has finally like wrapped its Kickstarter, and it is not a TTRPG, but it is a strategic, tabletop war game, which looks fucking
I would
sick.
call it a narrative skirmish game, right? There's less strategy and more just like, oh no, this person, did a hero move and they get a bunch of XP. This person, got fucked up and are injured forever. Heavy in theme. I mean, it's the Crusades meets World War I.
Yeah. It's also got art from Mike Francina, one of the designers from Mordheim. It's right. It was just 3 guys to begin with, and they just absolutely blasted their goal was $60,666 because of hell. Anyway, they raised over $3 million, and so this is great. Like,
it's the Mordheim design game team back together again with a new property. And I on our narrative wargaming episode, we talked a little bit about Mordheim and what makes it great or bad. And having played some of the playtest rules for Trench Crusade, it's basically preserved the Mordheim feel of like, oh, I'm going to grow attached and tell a little story about my warband with some updated game mechanics that are less of an insane, 300-page barrier to entry of learning the rules. Like, you can tell that they stole a little bit from like or borrowed a little bit from Apocalypse World style games and dice pool systems where there's less maths and it plays really nice, having played a couple playtest rules games.
Yeah, it will take some time, to hash out in playtesting, but on first blush, the rules are just like, they're still like crunchy war game rules, but they're so much lighter than Mordheim or a lot of the like the just general sort of like war game feel, which are often quite crunchy, quite rules heavy. So this is very exciting. I think this falls into the category if people are like looking for something cool and different, and they're willing to put money down for it. So this is all very exciting news, in my opinion.
Vasson still also like making new books and
Yes.
going strong. Another Modifius, a Free League joint here. They released a supplement for playing in like Eastern Europe, which is pretty cool, but has made me say, where's my book of like crazy Appalachian North American monsters? Why?
Yeah.
It's Euro bias here. But I'm excited people are still playing Vasson, and they're still making new supplements for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Vesson is. I think it's been doing really well. It's getting a lot of attention, and it's a great game. I really like it.
I also have to say, moving from like actual game news to like meta game news, last year, like the thing that excited me the most was the opening of like a legit independent source of TTRPG like games journalism in Rascal News. This year, it's got to be Quinn's Quest. I'm pretty sure everyone who listens to this podcast has probably seen this on YouTube, but Quinn's Quest is a review show of TTRPGs. They're just wrapping up their first season. It's by Quinn's, who people might recognize from the board game review channel Shut Up and Sit Down. Their videos are incredibly like high quality, very detailed, while also entertaining in their own right, and teaching you a lot about like what makes a board game work or not work. And the Quinn's is applying the same kind of logic, style, and production to reviewing role-playing games, specifically like reviewing role-playing games that are like not the biggest games out there, which is super good. It's great to see the city get, a better class of critic.
Yeah. I'm only like very recently aware of Quinn's Quest, but I think that the growth of channels like this and like Rascal News shows that people want this type of thing and are willing to pay for it, and that the hobby is growing. I think that's cool.
Yeah. It's refreshing to see someone like producing videos on TTRPGs that are not just like kind of drama clickbait that is solely focused on, I don't know, WotC or something like that. That's actually taking the time to do a nuanced review of a system, and that's super cool. And if you haven't checked out Quinn's Quest, you should.
So yeah, I think good news, good time to be a TTRPG player. Let's pivot, Matt, to what's going on with you, Matt? How are your games going? I haven't done a check-in.
I've been super busy for the last 2 months at work, but games are going well. I've got one coming up this Friday, and I'm looking at my prep notes, and I don't have a lot written down, but that's okay, because I know like what's going on beyond the immediate vicinity of my players, and I feel like I've gotten this group comfortable with the rules and comfortable with my DMing style and comfortable enough with the game world that I know, like, when I sit down on this evening or tomorrow evening and plan for like my 2 hours, I'm gonna have a fun game.
I mean, you always you do more prep than I ever have, and I do more than I used to. But yeah, I'm sure you're well prepared, Matt.
I guess since we last talked about it, my Brindlewood Bay group has actually started the real mystery. If you listen to our Brindlewood Bay review, you know that the game itself is not about solving mysteries in a single session, but you do present an overarching mystery, and we've only just started that after 6 sessions. It's a very infrequently meeting group. Yeah, I guess while that game is super fun, I think I would add the addendum, advance the timeline on the overarching mystery. Because I think maybe a season, at least if you're playing as infrequently as I am, shouldn't be 12 episodes. It should have been 6. It would have been nice to be wrapped with season 1 of Brindlewood Bay at this point. But I'm not. So lesson learned for me.
Lesson learned. Similarly, my cyberpunk group is still meeting again pretty infrequently. It's been hard to find time. People have been traveling, but we're still chugging along, and it's going very well. A lot of the long-standing threads are sort of finding to come together. Matt, you'll like this, or maybe you won't. I don't know.
Yeah.
My psychotic religious fanatic who has seen beyond the black wall and become radicalized by it, cult leader guy has a bunch of little minions, and I've themed them. You like to have a theme. Anyway, I had a chromed out bad guy who threw grenades and fired rockets, who was modeled after Saint Barbara. Do you remember Saint Barbara from Fort Sill, Matt?
Yes, of course. Yeah,
she's the patron saint of artillery.
Patron saint of artillery.
Anyway, so my players finally got to encounter this cyber psycho with a bunch of grenades and rocket launchers and missiles grafted onto her, and it was a very epic and compelling fight. I had a lot of fun with that one, but I also this arc has been going longer, both just because it takes us longer to play, but also just because I'm not driving it forward, and I think I'm gonna have to lean on the scale a little bit to make some progress, because I was hoping to be reach some sort of climax with this arc and move on to something different before now, and it's all good, but yeah, I think that you and I like to leave our players in charge and let them, be masters of their own destiny. But I do think that, one of the challenges of being a GM is that sometimes you gotta put your thumb on the scale a little bit to get things moving sometimes. So that's a bit of a lesson for me with my cyberpunk game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You want to wrap an arc in a satisfying real world time. Especially if you're doing games some of our games where we don't have that weekly meeting. Yeah, you gotta wrap the.
Yeah, I gotta give a ton of credit. My players have gotten so good at taking notes. They've been way better than when I had them in previous games and sessions, and so everyone knows what's going on. But the impact and the importance of an NPC or a clue that I dropped when it was literally a year ago is less significant than if it it's still fresh in your mind, fresh in I might be yeah, you remember when you fought that guy a year ago, and they'd be yeah, I hate that guy, but it's it's I don't want to have to remind them about these villains. So yeah, it's sometimes you can't avoid this, right, if you just don't meet very often. But I definitely, this is something we talk about all the time, Matt. I'm leaning towards shorter campaigns, just in general, just to keep things moving along, and when it's still kind of present in people's minds, when they still have some attachment to what's going on.
I was wondering about your system mastery now, several years into Cyberpunk Red, because I was thinking about this in my Star Trek campaign, at least from the GM side, of the structure of a Star Trek session. I've gotten so much more comfortable. At the beginning, the first couple sessions, I was always grabbing a published module that was I don't know, 10, 15 pages long, filled with science notes and stuff like that. And now I'm all right, I'm getting down to the 1 or 2 pager, and it's just a good feeling when you reach a certain GM mastery of a system.
I know exactly what you mean. I remember looking this up. It's been a year and a half of me running this cyberpunk campaign regularly, and I was making a ton of mistakes until very recently, and I think I've finally got my head around some of the key areas where I keep having to grab the rule book. I made some reference documents for myself of things that I knew I was going to constantly get wrong. You always have the rule book at hand, but I made basically both like a spreadsheet and a flashcard of like things that I kept having to look up, and that has really helped. And I do feel like a lot more comfortable with it, and I feel like I've also like realized some things that my players are not going to engage with, and I've either like dropped them from the game or like made changes so that just like they work better with my group in my session. But that wasn't something that I felt comfortable doing until recently. But yeah, it took a little bit longer. I mean, this is I don't know what your feeling with this is, Matt, but like the truth is, unfortunately, that I have spent just like a lot of time. I think like my brain solidified around like 3.5. Like I think that like if I don't like catch myself, I find myself just like assuming that like I'll say perception if I don't like, think about it too hard. I'll forget how death saves work and go back to like what they were in 3.5. Like I don't want to overstate this, but like
Sure.
I think that like I am still like when I am learning a new system, it takes longer for me to like settle in to being fluent, conversant with it, I guess. And not that long, but longer than it used to. And maybe that's just because like I was running the same thing or playing in the same system so many times for so long.
No, I've absolutely felt the same thing happening to me. I think that's like the true benefit of running systems that are like radically different,
Yes.
right? That
Yep.
don't have so many of the TTRPG like shibboleths that are in like 90% of the systems produced from like 1983 to 2004, where you're like, well, yeah, I don't have to worry about perception because there's no such thing that's even remotely close to this in this system.
Right,
and then like when you're running those systems, it can be so much easier to run because, yeah, how could you even make that mistake? The game won't let you.
I agree. And
Whereas
it's one of the
Cyberpunk
reasons-
absolutely will, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I love about something like Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark has so little, in my opinion, overlap with D&D that like I don't have much trouble running it because it's just like got a whole different like DNA, like it's the roots or something else entirely. But yeah, it's going well. I do feel finally like I'm able to run and like put together cyberpunk scenarios and enemies and things without having to like dig in quite so much. There are definitely still some parts that I have to go back to the book for, but it's better than it used to be.
I think I also got comfortable enough with my like episode of the week Star Trek game that I was able to eventually like introduce if you're familiar with Star Trek, like certain seasons of the revived TV show and the like 90s aughts classic often had a kind of a villain of the season. It was the Borg, it was the Romulans, it was the Cardassians, it was the Hirogen, some better than others. And I finally was able to like, it's hard because this is again a problem with like published space, is it's hard to come up with a truly original like Star Trek villain, or it's Star Trek, they're not actually villains, they're maybe just misunderstood or possibly future allies, antagonists, right? That are different enough than what's already been shown on the show. And I think that went over well. And this was a time where I truly went against my instincts and leaned more into the mystery box, aspect where, I do know most of the things about these antagonists, but, if they're an unknowable or less knowable alien race, it's okay for players not to find out a super lot about them because there's still a lot of other people and things to interact with and make decisions about.
I like a mystery box, and I think that if you're going into it aware of the pitfalls of a mystery box, then you're probably going to be fine. Like if the problem with mystery boxes, Matt, is when you inevitably have to open the box, right? And here's the thing, I think there are ways to avoid that. You can never open the box, or you can partially open the box, but like you do either have to plan to not open it or know sort of what's in it. What you can't do is what the canonical example here, right, is Lost. Not know what's in the box, and then at the end of the 6th season just kind of punt. That's what makes.
I'm literally tabbing over to my planning document and putting a strike through. Maybe they were humans all along. Might not be.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Though maybe so. I don't know. It depends.
Yeah, I don't know. That I gotta feel them out and see if it's a good enough surprise or not.
Yeah. But that's okay. I also think mystery boxes work especially well in TTRPGs because you have a lot more time to adapt and roll with it and make changes, and also your players can sort of like give you like they you can see like what they think is in the box, and you can either adapt or either go with that or specifically subvert it depending on like whatever feels good to you.
Yeah.
My other group, this is the one that I was running Invisible Sun in, and now that I've got the cube, we probably will again soon, but it's kind of turned
Congrats
into...
on the cube, Rob.
Thank you. Here's the thing. I paid for it and bought it so long ago that I kind of forgot about it, but I I don't know if I regret it, but now I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? Anyway, this group has also kind of turned into like just
you should just take that weird hand and just put it on your mantelpiece.
I will.
Mantelplace, yeah.
Has turned into like just a play testing group for like different things. We played Vaesen, we played Brindlewood Bay, we tried out. Does not matter. Never mind. Anyway,
you played another different system,
and this has been
was
fun.
It fun?
It was fun. This group includes, well, we're all like game designers of one kind or another, and so it's a fun group to play with. All of us don't generally get to DM very often, so that's a lot of fun, and it's also just like kind of like a wild group because of that. So we're gonna be trying out the thing that I have been designing, the thing that I've been working on. Trinity, which I've mentioned, and we'll probably do a longer episode on. But that's excited. I'm excited to play test that. And my friend Andy, who's been on the show, has been working on something as well, which I think now uses like yarrow stalks as a randomization, like from the I Ching. I think he's like pivoted to like having that as like rather than dice. So we'll be
that's cool.
We'll be doing that.
It always use coins too.
Yeah. Anyway,
no,
so that's been a lot of fun, and it's nice to have like a long running group that you can do weird stuff with, I guess, like that you can get really bizarre with. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. I do wish any and all of my groups met more often, but that's okay.
Sure, don't we all? I mean, it's really nice to have one group. It's nice to have different groups that you can do different things. And like it's just reminding me of like
Troika.
Again,
I'm sorry.
Troika.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sure.
Troika.
Little OSR in there. Okay.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's just reminding me, like, at least for me, like the biggest core feature of TTRPGs is like the radical concept that it's cool to hang out with friends, right?
Yes.
And you and I are not people who like don't hang out with friends outside of TTRPGs. We do all the normal friend stuff. We're very normal people.
Matt has a very rich social calendar. He's always hosting dinner parties and movie screenings and
fancy cotillions,
Formula One brunches and all that. I do some of these things, but in far lower volume. But yes, we do other things besides play TTRPGs. We have friends.
And it's like there's a special like kind of friendship that you can develop through games, and I think they have the special way of like reaching people that it would be hard to become friends or deeper friends without games, and that's pretty cool. Like one of the most rewarding things of like my past year in gaming is see people who were friends with me become friends with each other, like outside of the game, right? You know, be like, oh, you were hanging out without me? You know, I'm not jealous or hurt at all. No, this is a good thing. It's like really good, like that, like you're like these games have the ability to like do that like crazy network graph across other people.
I've noticed the same thing, and I love that. Friends that I introduced because they came to my table to play games now hang out with each other. They play games separately from me. They are just friends separately from me. We still hang out sometimes, or we hang out for games, but like that is great. That is what I want, right? That's like one of the things that I find so great about tabletop games. And I think that there's really like, it's not just tabletop. I do think it is like games or this type of social activity, but I do think that it breaks down barriers and it makes getting together with people easier. I you know, we have talked about this, we've talked around this, but like I don't want to overstate anything, but I do think that like TTRPGs are important to me, to my life, in a way that, you know, you might not think like playing a game would be. But I do think this type of thing, this type of social interaction is important. And I think that it is something that a lot of people are looking for and that they're missing. You know, there is...
right. TTRPGs are not going to cure the disease that is the American empire.
Right.
We're not saying that,
right.
But we are saying they are important to a lot of people, us especially, in like a deeper way than I think maybe you and I even imagined when we started the show.
I agree, and I especially like after living through the pandemic and all the like the ways that shook up my like regular social interaction, I definitely am like, oh, this is not going to solve the social ills of the country. This is not going to like, you know, single-handedly like restore, you know, turn the hell world of America from a low trust to a high trust, you know, nation. But like, it's something. It'll help you survive maybe, and it will help you bring, you know, people together, help you, you know, get in touch with your community. There is, if you are ever read any of the like, you know, the mainstream newspapers, you will hear about a loneliness epidemic, which, right. You know, it's
we're
not
going
even,
on like 30 years of this.
Yes, of this, and it's not like evenly distributed, right? And it doesn't hit everybody the same way. But like, I think that you as a person, you the broad you, need to be conscientious about making sure that you are maintaining your social ties, because it's not, I think part of like what we've learned is that it's not built into society the way that it used to be, right? And this is, Matt's familiar with this book, I'm familiar with this book. Honestly, it's like 20 or 30 years old now, so like I think there's probably like new research on this, but it remains like I think a pretty important text, and that's Bowling Alone. And
it's one of those texts that's like so important that even if parts of it are not true or were wrong, they like became such a part of the intellectual conversation in America, right? It's by a sociologist named Robert Putnam. There's originally a shorter essay in the Journal of Democracy, and it remarks on the like declining social capital and like trust in American society. Like, people are less likely to be part of like religious, cultural, social organizations, sports teams, etc., especially unions.
Yeah.
And like, this is a big problem in like people's well-being and happiness, and also like how the democracy functions.
Yeah. And so like, just to be clear, like the problem, in my opinion, I think this is accurate. I think the problem, or a huge part of the problem, is really that union membership, right? Like, it has fallen precipitously from the, what, I don't know, you might consider the peak of American democracy, the peak of participatory democracy. And that's probably like the biggest thing. But the other thing that Putnam highlights is, people are, bowling leagues have disintegrated, you know, people, membership in like obviously churches, religion, that's huge. Also like fraternal organizations like the Elks and the Shriners. All participation in all of these groups, social groups.
Did
clubs.
he ever consider that a lot of these are really lame?
Yeah. I mean,
elk seem hella boring to me.
How did they become lame is really the question.
Yeah,
like they clearly didn't used to suck, and then at some point around the 90s they started to suck shit. Anyway, but like he's onto something, right? Like these are things. Like these are the things. That
with
keep people,
caveats of maybe you could read this as nostalgia for the 50s and 60s, which would be very bad.
Yes, that
shouldn't be nostalgic for those times, but
not
you
the
can
lesson
also
that you should-
diagnose. Yeah, people are lonelier today. That's not good.
There are good and bad conclusions to draw, and like I don't know that like wanting to return to like a 1960s social consensus is what we should be striving for. But the fact that, you know, and this is true of not just of like, you know, of mostly like white people organizations, but also like black churches have reduced turnout, and you know, the social ties in social organizations of all kinds have severely diminished. And this has obvious consequences, right? Like people don't spend time with people outside their workplace or their families, or they spend less time. And look, there are people that you don't want to hang out with and don't belong in your community. And this is not like a call for you to invite your local Nazi to your tabletop game. But being in community, hanging out with other people is important. And the, like I was saying at the beginning, the social structure, especially in America, I know a lot of our listeners are not American. That must be nice. But you're also, it is a global phenomenon. It's just, we are going to have to rebuild these things ourselves, right? Or partially.
And one reason that Putnam cites, and to quote here for this like trend in isolation and decline in social capital is, quote, the technological transformation of leisure. There's reason to believe that deep-seated technological trends are radically privatizing or individualizing our use of leisure time, and thus disrupting many opportunities for social capital formation. The most obvious and probably most powerful instrument of this revolution is television. He goes on to talk about some of the details. This was written in the 90s. The book came out in the 2000. Obviously, I think everyone could point to like social media on the internet, whether it's like Reddit or Instagram as a continuation of this trend. And I think like one of the fascinating things to like get a little theory on you is also developing and becoming popular during the same time is the technology of leisure time that is in the opposite trend, which is, TTRPGs, right? They are social capital building organizations to some extent, and they are not individualizing and they are not privatizing of our leisure time in a way that like kind of everything else that comes out is.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of, I don't want to overstate things, but I do sometimes feel like playing an RPG is like a little bit radical, because like it doesn't do, you're not giving your time and attention and money to bad actors that want you to spend more time and money. They can't extract, look, they're trying so hard to get you to spend money like people spend on Funko Pops. And like, no matter how much of a dice goblin you are, no matter how many books you buy that you're not going to ever read, you're never going to be spending as much money as like an enthusiast of like other media is. And I think, honestly, that's cool. And plus, all the time you spend actually playing the game, you are giving no money and no time and no attention to anybody but the people who are at the table with you. And that, at this point in time, we have become so atomized and so hyper-targeted for consumption and so, increasingly isolated with our screens. Even if you're playing, by the way, online, even if you are playing like a virtual tabletop, I still think that it is like, to me, it feels incredibly cool and liberating to not be doing any of that shit. Like, I love these individualized forms of leisure, by the way. I love TV and movies and books. I love to like curl up with one or more of those things and just like sink into it. But increasingly, I feel that like TTRPGs are the most interesting and rewarding, and also something that I'm like not... I never feel like I'm being suckered with TTRPGs unless I'm playing the what is it? Vecna's Ruin or something like that, where WotC is taking me for all I'm worth. But I'll watch. There's lots of TV and movies that I enjoy, and they still make great TV and movies. But sometimes I'll be watching something that's like it's a tie-in, it's a sequel or whatever, and I hope it's good, and it's not. It sucks shit. It's just like milking me for additional funds, and I feel like I'm being suckered, And I don't like, because you have control, because you're in community. I don't feel that way with TTRPGs, and increasingly feeling like I'm not either being suckered or no one's trying to sell me something, or I'm not like at risk for a scam is a very nice feeling,
Right. It is. I think it is just the most remarkable thing about TTRPGs, from a political, like sociological perspective, is that, they are a form of leisure technology that has been recently invented, right? That is going in the opposite direction of the other trends in leisure technology, right? And that, in the long run, is one of the most important things about TTRPGs, if not the most important thing.
And this is something that we're always talking about. Like, it's hard to measure reach. It's hard to measure how many players there are. We know that in terms of money, which is how our society measures everything, the entire spend on every tabletop role-playing game in the world is like, a fraction of what is spent on Fortnite in a year, like just like one, not even like the biggest video game, just like one of them. So like, I don't want to make it sound like this is like a global sweeping, phenomenon that is in competition with these greater.
But you just have to wait till the Fortnite RPG comes out.
But I do think that it is big. I think it matters. I think it's like an important and significant subculture. We've talked before about how like TTRPGs punch above their weight in terms of like social influence. Like D&D, for better or for worse, like is the every video game designer, every nerd, every like half to 3/4 of every like television writer currently working grew up playing D&D, because that was the game that like nerds and creative people played. And so even if not that many people are playing it in raw numbers, these things are influential. And I think more people, again, this is what we were talking about at the beginning, I think people are interested in this. I think people want tabletop, they want in-person leisure activities. And I think that, I think it's hard, right? Like this is the thing, like it's easy to pull up your phone and watch a TikTok. I did it for an hour today. It's easy to like flip on Netflix and watch something. It's easy to do any of these leisure activities. It's hard to get a group together to play any tabletop role-playing game. So like, of course it's not going to be as big or as financially valuable as something that, requires not just like no effort, but like negative effort, right? Something that you have to exert effort to not give into.
Right.
But I do think that's what makes it interesting, and to the extent that it can be kind of important.
We've said this before, but like TTRPGs are not therapy, though they could be therapeutic under the right circumstances and with the right mindset, players and GM. TTRPGs, in a similar light, are not organizing, right? But they can be organizational, right? They can't replace organizing and struggles of all kinds for like liberation and a better world, but they can help, right? At least
yes. And that's I think that's a great way of putting it, Matt, because like we don't want to overstate this, but there's been a lot of talk about like the left needs a Joe Rogan, or the left needs its own, Theo Vaughn or something. And it's like, maybe that's not gonna, like what the left needs is to restore union membership, right? Like nothing's going to save us except like serious hard work organizing and like building bonds with people. And that's not like having a irreverent podcast with the right politics, but like, to get to that organizing, to start building connections with people around you, like that's how it starts, right? You can't get people together to join a union. You can't get people to join a civic organization. You can't get people to organize around a cause if they don't like you, they don't know you, and they haven't like spent time in community with you, right? And
Yeah.
TTRPGs can be one strategy, part of a broader strategy for starting to build a world where we have a stronger, better, more liberatory community. And yeah, like
many of the players in one of my game, two of my games, I have met through activist organizations, and while playing games with those people is in no way, again, let me be clear with what I'm saying, is in no way a substitute for doing the actual work of those organizations or of organizing, right? It is strengthening the like communal bonds with those people that I'm involved with in those organizations. And that's nice, right? That's a good thing.
One of my groups is the same way. I met them through an activist organizing cause. We now hang out. I am still plugged in and involved with those causes because I see those guys for games. And that's nice. Like, again, these things they work together, right? They're synchronous. And this, I think, is one of the points that, like, you know, Putnam is getting at is like, you know, the bowling league seems like maybe a silly one, but like being there, hanging out, having friends, talking with your community, with your peers, you know, helps you stay involved and stay connected. You know,
yeah, you can't be an effective like organizer if you don't have any friends. I think that is obvious, but maybe it's not. You know,
a lesson that I think that if you spend too much time online in like leftist spaces online, I think sometimes this does get lost. Is like you have to have friends. Like you can't be an organizer if nobody likes you. Like, you know, like it's
and this is the thing about like being a game master and running games is you can't be a game master if no one likes you.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry.
It's true. They don't have to like you a lot. You don't have to be like the best person, but you have to like
you don't have to be popular. I think that's the misconception. You definitely don't have to be popular. Right. But you do have to be friendly.
Yeah, you have to be able to like, be friendly with people so they'll come to your games. Anyway,
and games, it works the other way too. Like I do think, okay, we've talked on like 24 of our mini episodes about people who, you know, just can't hack it, right? They don't have the socialization capacity to survive hanging out with other people for 3 hours. Something goes wrong. But for everyone who's like outside that category, I do think like, TTRPGs improve your like ability to socialize and cooperate.
I think
all
so
games
too.
do, right? I mean, this is not a special technology of TTRPG. You could play soccer, you know, it's fine.
I mean, it's because you have to hang out with other people. You have to get along with them. You all have to follow the same rules and, you know, cooperate to make sure the game happens. But like, I do think this is an underrated skill. And I think that, playing games is really valuable.
Right. You were telling me that like, essentially, you know, there is this very unproven but interesting theory that, you know, we are not just, you know, linguistic animals, not just social animals, but like gaming animals, the gaming species, the species that games,
the species that games. We'll have to talk about this in length or at length another time, maybe for a bonus, or I'll yell at you. But it comes from this book, Homo Ludens by Johan Huizinga, who's a Dutch historian and thinker from like the 1930s. And he has this idea that like what makes humans human is that they engage in play, like as a cultural phenomenon, and that like, you know, he has these things. Play is free. Play is freedom. It's, you know, it's distinct from real life. It creates order. You know, it has no connection to material interest, and no profit can be gained from it. Very funny. Mr. Huizinga, like how nice it must have been in 1930 to believe such a thing. Anyway, it's kind of an out there concept, but I do sort of like it. We'll talk about it at length some other time. But even if you don't believe that it is like the organizing principle of like what makes us human, I do think it is an important part of what makes us human. Like I think that and that this connection is very powerful. I think humans like to, and this can take any number of forms, but like sports, games, storytelling, I think that like all of our like narrative forms are emerged from like a kind of play, a kind of like, storytelling, right? Sitting around the campfire, making shit up. So that is all just to say that like, I think TTRPGs are an important part of that. And, even now in this like hellish dimension that we live in, it's worth doing, I guess, is sort of, kind of like what I'm driving at. And at the end of it all,
yeah, I mean, I'm
optimistic about the hobby, about the future because of this. Call me Pollyanna, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a pretty like generic thesis that we've come to, but it's one I can get to behind, which is that TTRPGs are worthwhile and will still be worthwhile, while not being the end and be all of human existence or any sort of maybe they lack the ability to in themselves make meaningful change.
Right.
But yeah, they're still incredibly important.
Yeah. In brief, like it's a grim time. The news is bad. We're facing down like a potentially unpleasant future. And like, I think a lot of people are withdrawing. Maybe they're feeling defeated or depressed or otherwise discouraged. And I just like, I feel
so
like
are we.
And so are we. But
Sometimes.
like, I want to say like, just very briefly that like, doing the things that make you happy and with the people who you like is an incredibly valuable and important thing to do and very much worth doing, no matter how like grim things get outside, I guess. Like that's just like kind of like, that's how I'm feeling at this moment, Matt.
No, it's a good feeling to have. Thank you for sharing that feling with me. I mean that sincerely. Sorry.
I know you mean that.
Came off a little sarcastic.
I know you mean that sincerely. I trying to put some positivity into the world. Anyway, we've been yapping about this for a while. I want to come back to Homo Ludens with a different episode, but thank you all for listening, everybody.
If you enjoy the show or you have some thoughts on this, drop us an email at dmofnone@gmail.com. Or, you can always share like what your game thoughts are, what you're planning over on our Discord, links in the show notes.
If you really like it, feel free to subscribe to our Patreon. We have a lot more content, a lot more listening. We're going to be sharing cool stuff. We have a bunch already, but more is coming, both episodes and supplements and other cool things just for our very special Patreon listeners. So thanks again, everybody. And whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.
Bye-bye.